Good evening. My name is Mark Barnico. I'm the Executive Director of the University of Chicago campus here in Hong Kong. Welcome to our webinar called Reimagining the Past, Digital Chinese Heritage Initiatives at UChicago. As always, we're sharing tonight's event live on Zoom, Facebook, and YouTube. And as always, you can submit your questions and answers by first registering on Zoom and submitting through the Q&A button. I'll remind you also at the end, but I wanted to remind you up front in case you don't stay to the end, that you should visit our website at www.uchicago.hk and subscribe to our e-news for the latest news and information about what's going on our UChicago campus here in Hong Kong. I'm really delighted to have Professor Wei-Cheng Lin with us tonight. Professor Lin is the Associate Professor of Art History and the College of Chinese Art and Architecture at the University of Chicago. Professor Lin's an expert in Chinese art and architectural history, focusing on medieval periods, particularly Buddhist art, architecture, and funerary practices. He authored Building a Sacred Mountain, the Buddhist Architecture of China's Mount Wutai. Professor Lin's research spans collecting, history, photography, architecture, and contemporary Chinese art. He's working on two books now, one on the performative potential of Chinese architecture, and another on the significance of Chinese artifact fragments. Professor Lin is on the steering committee of the Center for the Art of East Asia, which I believe he'll talk about a little bit tonight. He's also the faculty director for the Dispersed Chinese Art Digitization Project, otherwise known as the DCADP, and he'll be speaking about that tonight. Thank you for joining us, Professor Lin. I'll turn the stage over to you now for your talk.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mark. Thank you for having me tonight. And tonight, that's right, this morning here. Yeah, it's a great honor to speak to you all about the digital initiatives that we have at our center that Mark just kind of remarked about, and then I will try to use a couple of examples that we have done already to introduce the project that we have engaged. And then but this talk is more than just the digital projects that we have done. And then just like the title of the talk is Reimagining the Past and Digital Chinese Heritage Initiative at UChicago. Not only just about our digital projects, I hope, with this talk, I will be able to also engage some of the issues in relation to the ideas of Chinese heritage, cultural heritage. So, and then let's start. And then, by the end of the talk, if there's more time, then I will introduce more of our business at the center and also the work that we have done under this umbrella term DCADP. Okay, so let me share my screen for now. Okay, so I have a little draft just to make sure that I get my ideas conveyed, and also and make sure the time I keep the time. So it's a safer way to do it. So if you don't mind, I'm gonna start reading my draft, and then with all the images on the screen. So I want to start my talk with this juxtaposition of the three images. The first image on the right is a photo taken in the early 1930s that shows the central Buddha inside the wonderful pavilion at the Zihua Temple, built in 1444 during the Ming Dynasty in Beijing. Holding a mudra, the majestic presence of the sitting Buddha is enhanced by a recessed coffer sitting, or zaojing in Chinese, and a row of miniature palatial buildings beneath it, unmatched in its design and craftsmanship outside the Ming Forbidden City. So here, if you can see my cursor, so it's right here, that's the zaojing, the coffer sitting, and there's a series of the miniature buildings around it. The second photo in the middle from the 1940s shows the same coffer sitting, now installed along with other Buddhist artifacts inside the Chinese Temple Gallery at the Nelson Atkins Museum of Art in Kansas City in the United States. I took the photo on the left on my first trip to the Zihua Temple in 2014. It features the same central Buddha inside the wonderful pavilion, minus the coffer sitting. Instead, wooden boards filling the sitting, leaving the central Buddha as the lone focus of the initial religious ensemble. This talk is about objects or artifacts from China's historical past. Artifacts can move and sometimes travel great distances, but those of cultural values were more often removed, transported, and displaced through force. This was particularly true during the period of expansionism among the world's imperial powers in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. Nonetheless, it is also through the dispersion of cultural relics amid international strife and the rise of new nation states that the concept of cultural heritage emerged, describing surviving historical artifacts that still possess distinctive spiritual, material, intellectual, or emotional significance of a cultural society. It is in this sense of cultural heritage that I will propose to understand the history and meanings of Chinese artifacts now scattered around the world, such as this copper ceiling. So often we in the museums we appreciate the individual pieces of art, as an artwork. But today, I want to encourage us to really think about artifacts from another perspective, thinking about the history, thinking about the biography of the artifacts, see how these old artifacts will talk to us about their cultural origin. Cultural heritage has become such a buzzword that it hardly needs further explanation. However, for many, what it constitutes and how it is relevant to us today still requires further investigation. As an art historian, I'm particularly interested in actual artifacts in terms of their capacity to continue to reveal their cultural meanings and past histories, despite being detached from their sites of origin and recontextualized in an art museum. As seen on the screen, the movement of the cover sitting is not a simple relocation. It involves the removal of the artifact and its reassembling at a different location. And its displacement amounts to changing its significance and the temporal space of which it was initially a part. So you can see that so of course the piece of the art, the cover sitting under discussion right here, from a temporal space to a museum, the meaning of the purpose of that begin to change. But not only that, but also the size of origin, as you can see that in the image on the left, without its cover sitting, entire space also appear different. So the cover sitting is not unique. It's not unique in this regard, as our museums around the world continue to display fragments of non-Western culture to offer representations of their historical past. This begs the questions of what cultural heritage these displaced artifacts represent and how their dispersion and displacement contribute to our understanding of them. Fortunately, the movement of artifacts leaves trails of their travels, whether ephemeral or material, providing clues up to their life story. So the Center for the Art of East Asia at the University of Chicago pioneers research, documentation, preservation, and restoration of China's cultural relics using digital technology. It has also engaged in discussions about cultural heritage since its first digital projects in 2007. With general support from the Cyrus Tong Foundation, the center launched the Dispersed Chinese Art Digitization Project, or DCADP, in 2020 to broaden the scope of its digital initiative and enhance engagement. So this is our website, and then later on I will also let you know how you can visit our website. So and then if you scroll down, then there's each project has its project website, and you can visit to see all the projects that we have been doing. So and then hopefully after the talk you will become more interested in visiting our website. So one of our chief goals is to trace the movement of artifacts through provenance research and then digitally reinstate them to their sites of origin, so they become contextual again. Yet, as I will demonstrate, the aim is not to retract or reverse history, but to explore the stories of the artifacts and the meanings and significance of the cultural heritage they constitute. I also hope to show how the digital technology and virtual vision they bring about are crucial in this exploration. Okay, so this is my first section. Before returning to the Zhuhai Temple, I want to begin with another cultural heritage site, Longmen. One of the best-known Buddhist grotto sites, Longmen preserves hundreds of caves filled with religious icons and relief murals carved in stone by members of royal families, aristocrats, wealthy patrons, and religious groups. Despite its glorious past, Longmen, like many other historical sites in China, fell out of public attention during the late imperial era. It was not until the late 19th century that the largely deserted Buddhist site was rediscovered by foreign explorers, yet in a vastly different context. Before the turn of the century, Japanese art historian Okakura Kakuzo arrived in Longmen and was amazed by the superb Buddhist sculptures from the Tang Dynasty and earlier. And after that, many foreign explorers followed suit and left abundant records and images, such as the one on the screen that you are seeing. This is not recorded by or the document by Okakura Kakuzo, but later, by the Charles Land Freer when he went to Longmen and took a whole bunch of notes and also images that are now become available. So the statues were no longer worshipped as religious icons, but admired as representations of Chinese sculpture art achievements. Edouard Chavannes, the French sinologist, published his survey of China's archaeological remains in 1909 with detailed illustrations and photographs, including Longmen. One of the caves lauded by many is the Binyang Central Cave, or Binyang Zhongdong. So this is the set of the images taken by Chavannes and then published in 1909. And then this is the once you enter the cave, that's all the set of icons that you will see inside the central Binyang Cave. So the central, and here I have a couple more images. So if we zoom out to see, that's how Binyang Central Cave today looks like. Initially, it was designed as a triple caves, and then eventually only the central cave was finished in 523. And then inside the cave, the Chavannes cave, the photos that you have seen, and this is how you will see today, as an ensemble of the iconic set. So Binyang Central Cave is the first cave dug into the mountain cliff at Longmen, completed in 523 during the Northern Wei Dynasty. It was commissioned by Emperor Xuanwu in honor of his deceased parents, the former emperor and empress dowager. Many agree that Central Binyang Caves exemplifies the best quality of the imperially sponsored cave constructions. However, its reputation, disseminated through photography, also led to its destruction. Very soon, damages sustained from the intentional chipping and cracking of the Buddhist statues and stone reliefs began to be seen. So in this photo, you can see very clearly, for example, the head right here is missing. And actually this one is, I put it right there. So you can see this is right now in the collection of the Tokyo National Museum. The sculpture from Longmen were already available in the market and included in the art exhibitions in Europe in the first decades of 20th century. In October 1913, a letter sent to the editor of the North China Daily News called for attention to the increasing vandalism in Dunhuang. So here, that's the article right here, the monuments of China. So that's the entire letter that's sent to the editor. Where the sale of the China's antiques increased, the letter continued, and I quote, "What arouses strong opposition is the gradual destruction of larger works, which cannot be removed from their original place, and are being despoiled of fragment after fragment, so that in course of time they will be chipped out of existence." End quote. In 1932, the young art historian Lawrence Sigmund, who later became the Oriental art curator at the Nelson Atkins Museum of Art, arrived in Longmen and noted the years-long destruction of the caves. He was particularly impressed by the beauty of the relief panels marked in red right here in the southeastern corner inside the Binyang Central Cave. depicting a devotional procession led by the deceased Empress Dowager next to the entrance. So earlier we saw this cave, the panoramic view of the cave. That once you enter the entrance, that's what you will see. But when you turn around before you exit, so here that's the entrance. So before you exit on both sides, you will see this the relief right there. And Sigmund noticed that on the second visit to Longmen in 1933. So Sigmund, when the first time he went over there in 1932, he saw this very beautiful reliefs right here. And then 1 year later, when he revisited the Longmen, and also the central Binyang cave, Sigmund noticed most of the stone reliefs on the cave's exit wall has been partially chipped away, highlighted in the red right here, including the Empress Dowager procession relief, as their fragments came onto dealers' market in Beijing. And in fact, if I can show you the entire whole exit wall. So this is the section that I highlighted right here. So this the Empress procession, Empress Dowager procession panels right here. But other than that, you can see all these pieces were chipped off, just 1 year apart from 1932 to 1933. So all these pieces were gone. And seeing no significant actions was taken to protect Longmen from Chinese central government, Sigmund began to buy fragments of the relief panel with the aim of reassembling and reconstructing them to be displayed in the museum. So you can see that this piece were chipped away, and then actually Lawrence Sigmund, when he found that in 1933, he sent a letter to the central government in Beijing, informing them the destruction of the caves in Longmen, but he didn't really receive any response. So instead of trying to advocate more protection, he decided to go to the market to purchase the fragments, and then that's the part of fragments that he acquired in the market. And also around this time, the cover ceiling at Zhuhua Temple was also removed from its structure, extracting it from its religious context. So this is one photo right here. So you can see this cover ceiling right now was removed, and then all these small pavilions was right there. So in my talk, I have two protagonists. One is this cover ceiling right here. The other one is these panel reliefs, and both were taken and disassembled or destructed from their site of origin around this time during the early 1930s. And in either case of the two examples right here, destruction became a necessary means of removing the initially immovable artifacts. Yet the fragmentation is reversible, leaving indelible physical traces of chipping and cracking that forever change their nature and purposes. The destruction of China's historical remains did not go unnoticed by the public. The call for better protection and stewardship of historical artifacts ultimately led to the central government's legislation of the law for preserving ancient artifacts, or 古物保存法 in 1931, which was implemented to all transactions. For preservationists, protecting the ancient relics was essential to preserving China's history, traditions, and beliefs, and crucial for building a modern China. Yet, as China experienced political unrest and struggles while moving into the modern era during the first decades of the 20th century, many saw little chance in this quote-unquote collapsing country to care for and appreciate its cultural and artistic past. In the case of the cover ceiling, identified as, quote, the best possible bit of Chinese architecture left undestroyed, end quote, some argued that acquisition by extracting it from its temple structure was the only way to salvage the masterpiece. The debates between foreign collectors and museum curators and the Chinese preservationists continue to this day, but what is at stake is the modern meanings and values of historical artifacts. While for museums and collectors, preserving them is for the benefit of the world's artistic heritage. For Chinese preservationists, preserving them is to recognize historical relics not as something in the past, but as part of the nation's unalienated cultural heritage and a tangible expression of its tradition. So what I want to say is that, through this entire process of destroying or disassembling, so the historical artifacts begin, the meaning of that begin to evolve. So it becomes part of the world heritage. For the Chinese, it becomes a very important expression of the cultural past. So, and then let's talk about the story. So here, my next section, I'm going to talk about the fragments of this piece right here. The monumental relief sculpture of our earlier discussion depicting the devotional procession led by the Northern Wei Empress Dowager was unveiled in its newly restored state at the Nelson Atkins Museum of Art in 1941. So that's the photo you are seeing right here was taken soon after the relief was restored right here in the far end of this gallery. It has been praised as representing the highest achievement in relief sculpture prior to the Tang Dynasty. However, our provenance research indicates that it was heavily restored based on photos and rubbings taken before its destruction. So you can see that that's kind of the state. All the pieces purchased by Lawrence Sigmund, and then when he brought all this back to the United States at the Nelson, then he was the curator at the Nelson Atkins Museum of Art. So he tried to put this together. But obviously, as you can see, majority part, I would say probably 40% of the entire mural was missing. So what they have done in the museum based on our research is that they begin to put the plaster over based on the old photo and the rubbings, and then put the color on. So you can see that as the third stage of the restoration. So you can see this part still needs to be painted. And eventually you can see the entire whole thing right here. And that's the entire process from the fragments all the way to return. So this kind of becomes earlier talking about the fragmentation. Now from fragments that become to the whole again. So, and if we go to the museum today, so you can see this is a panel in the museum today. We scan this piece as well. So, but obviously, it doesn't have the context anymore. It's a piece of artwork that you can zoom in to see all the details. You can turn around to the side to see the relief effects, right? So you can see all the details and then all the figures. So right now in the museum, its history all of a sudden becomes secondary. So what you see right here becomes just an individual work of art. So installed in a gallery, it has been completed. Transformed into a work of art, allowing for close observation and appreciation. Now, a complete relief panel, its artistic value is highlighted at the cost of its contextual meaning. Any effort to reinstate the stone relief panel in a cave encounters considerable challenges from its fragmented state and later restoration. In our attempt, we decided that to tell the story of this remarkable relief panel is to reveal its fragmentation. So we did a lot of research on this panel. We decided, based on the philosophy of DCADP, want to restore this entire piece and then reinstate it back to its site of origin. So we decided to reveal its fragmentation. So we're gonna start from 0-1, to see how this entire whole thing was put together, and then we document all these fragments. And in numbers, so we know exactly how many pieces they were put together. They are authentic, and in comparison, you can see that everything in outline authentic, but outside the outline, that's in shade, in gray color, there were later restoration. So our job is to distinguish what is real, what is not, and then we will be able to digital remove the later restoration that was done in the late 1930s into 1940s. And so now we compare all the outlines and then put it into the historical photos. So you can see that we try to find the ordinates right here. So we can match the photos with the restoration piece right here, and then transcribe this outline right there. As you can see, the restoration in late 1930s was not accurate. It was kind of widened rather than the positions of the figures were off. And then the next step that we did is we went to the cave to scan this the eastern exit wall. So this is the location of the Empress Dowager procession right here. And after scanning that, Then we can transcribe this outline and then the positions back to, this is scanned wall right here. So we're mapping the position of figures on the actual cave wall, so we will be able to decide where they are. We also find these corresponding kind of points right here, right? So, and then eventually we'll be able to make the entire, the line drawing of the whole thing, and then we store everything into its completeness. So this is a new restoration. It's a digital restoration rather than 1930s. They use the restorers use the white plaster to restore the entire whole mural, and also we highlighted everything in gray is the original authentic piece, and then all this white part is our restoration. And then I thought this is quite important process because in our retrieving the process from the fragments and then take from the complete piece that is in the gallery right now, and then take the plaster off and then begin to see the fragments, and then we did a restoration. I thought it's quite significant because if we compare, so the one on the right is a scanned model in Nelson right now, and then these are old photos. You can see that the face is not exactly the same. So, and then this is our restoration, and you can see the differences. So, and then we are pretty confident that our restoration is much more accurate. Our team in China is a team of sculptors, and then with their experience, they will be able to do the restoration. And then eventually, we kind of put it in the three-dimensional sense. All right, so we're gonna show you a little bit right here. So this is our restoration. After we restore it, and then we put it in the cave. So the entire whole thing you are seeing right here is a 3D models. So we have the entire whole space. Right now, we can, looking up, you can see the scale of the entire space, and then zooming, you can see how it finally comes back to its site of origin. So it's not only the scales, but you feel much more material and also much more spatial. You feel like you are positioned yourself in the cave itself, inside the cave interior, and then you see the angles, you see the proper angles to see the entire mural, whether like in the gallery, so it becomes detached from its site of origin. So the entire reinstatement process is to retrieve the process of the panel's fragmentation, that the artifact tell its life story, because it's a fragments, and then we store into a completeness. Now we reverse the process, so we begin to see the story kind of unfolds by itself. So the life story, including its carved image that guided anyone visiting the cave through the devotional worship in history, and its brackage during the drastic change of the world order in the early decades of 20th century. So, the history is not only about the present, but also by reverse the entire process, we'll begin to see how it was able to be seen in its original context and also time. So the digital reconstruction offers a new method of seeing, which we call defragmentation, that helps unfold the object's layered history in our imagination. We can reverse the history of the panel, but the process of retrieval provides a way for us to explore its contemporary meanings. The digitally restored panel in virtual space is not a physical reality, but the physical sensibility of virtual reality, its height, viewing angle, and the spatial relationship with the viewer offers an alternative experience that actuality can no longer provide. So that's my first example. And the second, I want to return to the cover scene that I started with for the talk. So unlike the relief panel, the cover seating is not displayed alone. In fact, the components that constitute the entire space all came from different sites and time periods, but they are installed together as an artistic ensemble intended to evoke a Buddhist aura, allowing visitors to experience the art of the religion that originated on the other side of the world. To make the space visually coherent, some adjustments to the artworks were made when the Chinese temple gallery was first constructed. For instance, it is rare to see the wall facing the entrance of a Buddha hall completely covered by a mural. So you can see the mirror right here. It's right, so this is the entrance. So when you enter, you have to see this mirror, which is unusual, for a real temple buildings. So measuring 25 by 50 feet and depicting the assembly of Tejaprabha Buddha. The mirror came from the Buddha Hall at the Guangzhen Temple in southern Shanxi. So you are seeing the temple hall right here. It was initially made to cover one gable wall. Oops. So here, that's a temple space, and then you can see this. It covers one temple wall right here, and facing the entrance of and the cover one gable wall facing another equally monumental mural, the assembly of Vaishyaja Guru Buddha, now installed at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. So the mural is actually on both sides. So this is the entrance is right here. You come in, you will see these icons right here, and then on both sides you have the murals. This one is right now at Matt, and this one is Nelson. But at Nelson right now, they put not on the gable side, but put on the wall that faces the entrance. So so the Chinese temple gallery, as you are seeing right here in the slide, is made of authentic objects from China. But in reality, such a temple space never exists in China. So is it a fantasy or a somewhat accurate approximation of China's religious and artistic past? For almost a century, since 1933, when the Chinese temple gallery was open to the public, the covered ceiling was anchored space with its exquisite craftsmanship and powerful representation. But its religious significance localized in the site of origin has been obscured. To retrieve the lost connections and defragment the covered ceiling, our team began collaborating with the museum to scan the entire gallery space, turning it into a 3D model. So you can see these are 3D models, so we can, in the virtual space, we can begin to take things apart, without touching the real thing. So through careful examination of the original diagram, created prior to the installation in 1933, which will be the two diagrams on your right, we generated accurate measurements of the covered ceiling or wooden components according to a traditional joinery, and a virtual counterpart in the simulated reality. So this one will be our model right here. In the virtual environment, we could now remove and disassembled the structure to be reinstated in its original context. So once we have this model, we can kind of take it apart, by steps and see how they put together. And now, since in the virtual space, we remove it already. So this cover ceiling is ready to be put back to its original context. So in the following year, I'll collaborate, and this is the temple space. I forgot to show this. So there's a temple space. So the cover ceiling is on the second floor. So if you zoom into the second floor, you can see that there's three Buddhas, and in the central bay, there's a Buddha right here, and then that's a space where this cover ceiling is originally located. And right now, its structure is exposed because the cover ceiling is not in that space. And Tsinghua University in the following year, our collaborators, the team from the Xi'an Jiaotong University, scanned the interior space along with the three Buddha statues of the wonderful pavilion at Zhuhua Temple. And Tsinghua University provided the point cloud data for the entire two-story pavilion, showing the spatial positions of icons within the building structure. Note that the number of the small panels covering the interior walls, each contained a small city Buddha, is about 10,000, which gives the building its name, Wanfo, meaning 10,000 Buddha pavilions. So you can see that, very small, tiny, the squares right here. This is the photo of that. So each one will represent a little small niche in which Buddha image was enshrined. And altogether, throughout the entire building, there are about 10,000 of them. So that's the reason why it's called 10,000 Buddha, 10,000 Buddha pavilion. And the central Buddha, right? This is a central Buddha. The central Buddha is identified by its mudra as a Vairochana Buddha or universal Buddha, aptly occupying the center of the entire structure made up of the 10,000 Buddhas. Iconographically, a vertical hierarchy can be observed. It is designed for a worshipper to venerate the Shakyamuni Buddha on the first story, on the lower level, which is elevated to the Vairochana Buddha on the second as the worshipper moves through the interior level. With this elevation in mind, the recessed cover seating installed above Vairochana Buddha thus tops the vertical sacred center, simultaneously elevating the vertical ascendance and marking the centrality of the Buddha. So here, as you can see right here, this is the space of the cover seating. So this central axis is quite important. So this is Shakyamuni Buddha, Vairochana Buddha, and then you have the cover seating right here. So and here, and then once we put the cover seating back on, then this vertical, the sacred center makes a whole lot of sense from Shakyamuni, Vairochana, and it's cover seating. And you can see that's where the cover seating will go about. And now these are 3D models. Then this is the part, all the small pavilions we have put in place already. And then the one difficulty for us to decide the space, where the position of the cover seating is, all the traces of removal are gone already. So it took us a while to decide where the cover seating will go. And eventually, this is our reconstruction. So it's almost like you kneel down. This view shows you the scene that you will see when you kneel down in front of this Vairochana Buddha. So kneeling before the central icon, one looks up to the Buddha, not as a single iconic center, but accompanied by the majestic presence of the coiling dragon that symbolizes the center of the universe, surrounded by the miniature buildings, suggesting a realm beyond our mundane reality. In other words, it is only with the reinstatement of the cover seating that the religious space is completed, allowing its iconographical significance to become perceptible. Here, okay, so this is a little walkthrough. So you can see, here this is a stair, and then once you come in here, and then you can see the three Buddha statues. And you can look around to see all these panels have been removed and then collected at the Nelson Atkins Museum of Art. You can see the space and then see how this cover seating and its relationship with the central icon. And then finally, come to the other side of the space. All right, in 1933, when Liu Dunzhen and Liang Sichen, two preeminent architectural historians, arrived in Zhihua Temple to investigate the wonderful pavilion, the cover seating was already extracted from the building structure. The photo on the right, taken before their arrival, was the only picture that could help them imagine the space when it was still completed. Thanks to digital technology, the DCADP project is now able to restore the space, enabling us to reimagine the past, a visual experience otherwise untenable in reality. So this is our reconstruction. And then this is the two projects that we have discussed today. History cannot be reversed, but the new vision provides potential for our reimagination. Neither of the spaces on the screen exists in reality. We can walk history back to verify whether the reconstruction matches exactly what existed in time and space of their creations. However, as we just saw in the short video clips of the temple hall, the temple hall space, virtual reality shows us an alternative world to simulate how the artifact could have been seen, experienced, and understood. So its significance remains close to home. Cultural heritage involves research, preservation, and stewardship of historical sites and their artifacts. But what constitutes its essence must rest in a sympathetic understanding of these sites and artifacts, which transform them from remnants of the past into the heritage of today. Due to my role in the undertaking of DCADP, I've often been asked about my views on the repatriation of dispersed Chinese artifacts. I believe the issue is far more complex than I can address today. But as I've demonstrated, the process of defragmentation is as material and physical as one can get in reality. we needed to put our fingers literally on each timber component of the cover seating and the timber frame structure that holds it to restore it accurately. Though in the virtual world, the knowledge gained through digital simulation is firsthand and intimate, and arguably more provocative than it is in reality. So we can change the lighting right here. There's another angle. We can put a light on right there, and then, or we can looking down from the Leo pavilion, of the space. And seeing the space of the Vajrayana Buddha from one of the miniature buildings known as Heavenly Palaces gives us a glimpse into the realm beyond mundane reality, a religious aspiration embedded in the wonderful pavilion. So this aspiration to the cultural past and what it transpires in a collective memory should be the ultimate purpose of cultural heritage. Without it, the discussion of repatriation became only political, which is beyond my expertise. Any effort and dedication to preserving cultural heritage need to be sustainable. In the case of the cover seating or the monumental mural from the Guangzhen Temple in the Chinese Temple Gallery, removing or relocating them elsewhere can cause further damage to the artifacts. This doesn't justify the colonial and imperialist context in which they were acquired during the 1920s and 30s, the reason why so many Chinese artifacts are now dispersed and collected in our museums around the world. The work of DCADP addresses precisely this historical context by revealing fragmentation and defragmenting the displaced artifacts virtually to explore their modern meanings and the relevance today. Then what do we do with such a space as Chinese Temple Gallery, a place of contemplating Buddhism and appreciating Buddhist art for generations of Americans since its creation in 1933? The term virtual derived from Latin virtus, meaning potential, as opposed to the actual. Virtuality exists within the matrix of multiple times and spaces, providing both the actual and potential dimensions of reality. By this definition, the Chinese Temple Gallery is a virtual reality, consisting of artifacts from different times and spaces, though its virtuality requires the viewers to delve into the history of its component, to unpack its multiple times and spaces. With today's digital technology, we can reanimate each artifact by retrieving its historical time and space without taking it apart from the museum space. It has been apart since 1933. The gallery space is thus turned into the hub of the spatio-temporal matrix of artifacts, which will continue to tell their stories in a new virtual language for generations to come. Thank you. So this is all I have today. And then I want to thank the Sarah Song Foundation for making the entire project possible. And then if you want to learn more about our projects, you can either go to our Center for Art of East Asia right here, or go to our the project website, DCADP, right here. So I'm gonna turn the table back to Mark so we can, if there are questions among the audience, I would be happy to answer your questions.
Great, Professor Lin. Thank you so much. For the audience, if you have questions, you know how to do it. Put your questions in the Q&A, and I'm watching for that. I'll get us started. Can you just give us a sense of the timing and the logistics involved in this whole project from where you are today to where you started from, and what period of time that took place in, and how many people have been involved in this project?
So our Center for the Art of East Asia at the University of Chicago pioneered this kind of endeavor to restore Chinese dispersed cultural artifacts digitally. And we started very early on 2007. And that was our first kind of the pilot project. And it really, early on, it took us forever, about 5 years or so, to find all these fragments, and then went to all the museums to scan their pieces and then put them together. And then back then, all the scanners are really bulky, very big, and then you have to travel with all this very heavy, equipments. And of course, 10 years later, 2017, even 2019, and then it has become a lot easier to travel with the equipments, and then so the project began to really take, became the entire process of making becomes faster. But at the same time, I think museums around the world, including those in China, become more aware of this kind of the business of digitization of the cultural relics, and then there's a lot of discussions about that. One is, for example, copyright issues. So once you scan, a piece, so who owns this copyright, and then the use of this digital the property, unlike the physical property, it can only exist in one place. But the digital properties can be transmitted very fast. So how can we control that transmission without damaging, the ownership of the piece, the actual piece? So there's a lot of issues kind of arose, and then we have to really deal with that, little by little. But from 2020, with the sponsorship from the Samsung Foundation, our team start to grow. So right now we are a team of 5 people, still very small, of operation. We have our own website designer. So it's a digital technology kind of specialist in the digital technology who helped us create all these websites that you have seen, all these images that I showed. And then we also have the digital archivist, or the curator of our digital information. So, and then if you go to our website, you'll find this open access searchable database. So we collect and compile all these data and 3D models of the visual materials into a database and make them searchable. And then so everyone can access our project, the database, and then you can view all the visual materials that we have collected. And then if you want to request to use any of them, you just kind of contact us, and then we will let you know how you will be able to use them. So so we'll continue to do this project, but of course, it has been more than 10 years, almost 20 years of this endeavor, and then we encountered a lot of problems. But at the same time, very interesting kind of issues also arise, and then it just has been a very kind of a joy journey. So throughout the entire whole process, but of course, we like to know how people feel about them and want to use them.
Thank you. Again, the audience, please send your questions through the Q&A, and I'd be happy to relay them to Professor Lin. Professor Lin, you mentioned Xi'an Jiaotong and a couple other collaborators. Can you talk a little bit about the collaboration between UChicago and the Chinese organizations you're working with, and the strengths that each party brings to the project?
Right now, the DCADP has 2 parts. One is in China, is Xi'an Jiaotong University. There's a kind of digital lab inside the division of art, and then our counterpart, our team in China, as I mentioned in passing my talk, consists of a group of sculptors, and then led by Professor Jia Zhuofei, who's a pretty well-known sculptor in China today. And then so they also started this digital technology, using it for their creative work very early on, at the turn of the century, from 19th century, and from 21st century, they start using this digital technology to do their work. So we work with them. We don't really have this digital expertise, like I can do all the stuff that you see today. Someone made it for me. So our team is really thinking about the framework of understanding, thinking about the framework for these entire projects. And we contact the museums outside China, but the scanning part, the technical part, will be assisted by Xi'an Jiaotong University. But we also work with, for example, Tsinghua University, Professor Li Luke, who is a professor in the Department of Architecture in the School of Architecture at Tsinghua University, who has also involved in a lot of digital project to digitally document historical buildings, including the buildings that of my discussion, the one for Pavilion. So we work with them, so we don't have to do every bit of work by ourselves. And I think that's kind of the nature of this collaboration. So our partners in China, and then they provide the expertise and specializations for us to document to acquire this data for reconstruction. And then outside of China, the center has been working with museums around the world for this project for more than almost 20 years already. So we have all the connections, and then we'll continue to do the provenance research to find where the fragments are, and then if they came from the same sites. And we are hoping, for example, for Loman, the Central Binyang Cave, there are still more fragments out there we are looking for. And then once we know where they are, we'll contact museums to see if we'll be able to scan that. And right now, a lot of museums are willing to do it. But of course, like I say, the understanding of the cultural property has become more and more among our colleagues in the museums. So there are worries, about how they will be used, and then how this by using these digital copies, the understanding of authenticity of our works become problematic. So there's a lot of discussions back and forth about this. And then on the legal side, of course, there's always this kind of legality kind of framework we have to take care of. So the center right now really plays a role, not just about the projects, but more about kind of connecting different institutions and their expertise, and then where the artworks are, and then we'll put them together. So the work has not been easy, but then we begin to find there's patterns, and then, for example, before the end of the month, we will host a curator forum. We'll invite out the curators from the museums that have a large Chinese art collection. We want to invite them to University of Chicago. We want to sit down together, want to introduce our projects to them. But at the same time, I want to hear what each museum is doing right now for this digital or digitization of the artifacts. And every museum has a little bit different kind of attitude, and also different kind of policies. And another issue I want to mention about is this provenance research. So thus far, University of Chicago, our center, the DCADP, wants to scan the artifacts, the dispersed Chinese artifacts around the world, if we found the provenance is legitimate. So that means that if there's issues about the provenance, we probably stop working with those pieces, because as I say, there's a greater colonial imperialist background in which those artifacts were acquired, and this project is not going to overlook those issues. So we try to kind of trade this ground very gingerly, and we want to make sure that we're doing the right thing for the field, but at the same time we're not overlooking the potential or possible problems of the artifacts because of their acquisition in history.
I'm curious, you mentioned other institutions and museums. Are there other universities that are working on these digital reimaginings? Are we leading, as UChicago, are we leading in this area outside of China? Just like, what's your perspective on who's involved in a lot of this work outside of your projects?
Well, there are different places in outside, beyond or other than University of Chicago. Our team are doing the very similar kind or slightly different kind of digital projects, right? So even in Hong Kong, there's a couple of universities, they do digital exhibitions, right? So they acquire these 3D models. They probably didn't really scan them themselves, but they are thinking about the exhibition end, right? So and then my good friends and also colleagues at Harvard, led by Professor Eugene Wang, and then so they also have a chem lab. And then so I don't mind, I think I should mention about them, because we are doing the very similar things, and yet for very different kind of purposes. So ChemLab, again, they do a lot of exhibitions. They thinking about a site or buildings or an artifact or a mural, and then they want to see how we can tease out the modern meaning of those artifacts by more creative presenting them, in front of the audience, for different kind of the different types of audience, for them to really understand, from very different kind of perspectives. And what we are doing, which is very different from ChemLab, is that this is part of our research, right? So, but at the same time, I think, as I hope I have shown it today already. So our focus will be those that are dispersed from the site of origin. So we want to kind of know what kind of memories that we can still tease out from those artifacts. And I believe there are layers of histories that we can tease out. And then, but how can we do it? And then digital technology provides a possibility. And then, so, just like the cover sittings, from a temple, a Buddhist temple to a Chinese temple in the gallery, right? So the piece itself by itself doesn't really change, and yet, because the context change and its meaning also begin to evolve. So the cover sitting, which can only exist in one place, either there in China or here in the United States at Nelson Atkinson Museum of Art, and yet, through a digital technology, we can actually bring these two stories together, by putting it back without taking it down, right? So, and of course, the way I ended my talk is really to think about the museum can really serve this function as well with assistance from digital technology. So what I want to say is that I think there are many different kind of engagements and endeavors out there beyond University of Chicago, thinking about the same thing, trying to tease out, trying to explore artistic values of cultural heritage. But then, for us, we find this very specific entry to these issues and want to kind of make it not only just one-time exhibition, want to document them, want to make them also available for interested scholars and students for the future. So this, though, what I showed today is one way of thinking about cultural heritage, and hopefully, for the students or scholars of later generations, they can find more creative way of using the materials that we have compiled already.
That segues to one of the questions that we had from the audience. I think you mentioned that moving the artifacts is very challenging, and because you're concerned about damaging those artifacts. But the audience member asked, how do you see the future of these artifacts? And what about the possibility of some kind of collaborative exhibition among different museums and institutions to have more of a holistic view of the artifacts across different dynasties?
I think that has been done already. For example, sculptures, individual sculpture that put it in a gallery, most of them were positioned or displayed in a way that they can still be moved around. So what I meant, this relocating them that will cause a second damage. I refer to those artifacts that are installed in the museum forever. For example, the murals that I showed in the Nelson Atkins, they were put there with the ideas of showing them in that spot in the museum for a long time, right? So all the covers seeing that on the scene of the gallery. If you want to take it down, that's definitely possible. But of course, that will cause a second damage. The first damage will be the removal or derived from the removal from the site of origin. And then once you put it back, you want to remove it again, you're gonna cause damage again. So with those pieces that are fixed in the museums, they're gonna be there for a long time, right? So and then I think digital technology provides a very I don't know. I mean, 100 years later, the technology probably is advanced enough to remove everything around without damaging them. But I think today, digital technology provides a possibility for us to remove something that cannot be removed again, right? So we'll make it digital, put them in the virtual sense, and then we can do it. And also, the other ideas that we have is that, for example, you have this cover scene right here at Nelson, and actually, people who know about this story will know that another Zhaojing from the same temple, Zhihua Temple, is right now in the collection of Philadelphia Museum of Art. So you actually have two pieces from the same temple. And then if we can kind of connect them virtually, and then through this digital technology, then the pieces are in different places, and yet we'll be able to combine them together, and then put them in the same space. And that's the first point I want to say. The second is that even for the pieces that can move, and then so that means that if I want to host an exhibition of Buddhist sculpture. The other Buddhist sculpture from Tang Dynasty, I can loan out the pieces from different museums and put it in one space. But at the same time, a lot of these pieces in the collection today, they will be moved by force from the site of origin. So when you put these pieces together, yes, you see this artistic value and then also the period style, but at the same time, at the cost of their contextual meanings and significance. So that's what I'm saying, yes, you can put all the pieces together and then kind of compare them. But what about their, in terms of cultural heritage, they all have their stories. So how can we explore those stories? And then exploring those stories is not just kind of taking them back to China. If you want the physical, taking them back to China, I'll be fine as well. But then, even with the physical relocate or the physical return of these pieces to the cave, that the original state of being was gone already. So and then the virtual reality provides a possible revenue for us to or avenue for us to really think about, reimagine this historical holistic. So I think I think that's a kind of the possibility. I hope this talk has demonstrated, and then that will be one way that we can try. And then I'm sure there are many different ways that we can do. But talking about cultural heritage, it's not just about the artifacts itself. It's about the ways in which we'll be able to sympathetically understand the piece of work.
Very good. How you all present to the public, the work that you're doing, apart from the website, are there any publications or exhibitions that you'd like to share with the audience so they can learn more?
So because the funding itself, the funding doesn't really support our exhibitions thus far. We will talk to different funding agencies to see if we can also dedicate some of our funds for the exhibition. So the project DCADP thus far has heavily emphasized the production itself, but slowly I think we're gonna evolve into more on the other side, so from production to exhibition as well. And this one we haven't really done a whole lot. So the website is the way, the major way of exhibiting what we have or highlighting or featuring what we have done already. But we are looking for funds to organize a major exhibition, a number of years from now. Right now, what we think the year we're thinking about is 2028. In that year, we're hoping that we'll be able to accumulate enough the experiences and also projects so that we can put together a large the exhibition, not only the digital models, but also we want to involve the contemporary art that thinks about the same issues. There's a lot of contemporary artists are also interested in this issue of cultural heritage. They are using historical elements and then transform them into their work. So we want to engage this. We call that as a contemporary parallel. So you have historical, and then you have a contemporary, that engage the same issues. So we want to do that, in 2020, and hopefully we will be able to update the interested friends and people and scholars what the exhibition plan. But other than that, and for each projects, the digital projects, we organize conference. For example, last year our focus was on the Central Pingyang Cave. So we held a conference in Beijing Center, the University of Chicago Center in Beijing, and then after the conference, we are working right now on the publication on the Central Pingyang Cave. So it consists of a volume that highlights the entire process of reconstruction of the relief mural panel, that I introduced today, the Emperor's Dowager Procession. So that will be in one volume. And the second volume will be a collection of papers. So that kind of introduce different kind of aspects of the cave and also the broader historical backgrounds. And also we will also introduce some of the new the research results. And then this year, the project of the focus this year is on the Zhaoling Liujun, so the 6 horses or royal steed originally installed at Zhaoling, the mausoleum of Zhaoling. So this is the focus of our this year. So the 6 horses, 2 of them right now are in the collection of the Penn Museum, the University of Pennsylvania Museum, and another 4 of them are right now in the collection of the Beijing Boguan. So in Xi'an. And then, so we want to scan all the 6 horses and put them together. And then we'll also make the models of the site and then put them back to these original sites. And then before the end of the year, we will organize a conference on this topic. And then the conference is going to be held in Xi'an. Hopefully it's going to be at Xi'an Jiao Tong University. And we are working on the publication of the project as well. So we try to find different ways to publicize our results. And so we'll be able to share our projects to anyone who is interested in different aspects or different kind of facets of our projects.
In case we have anybody who's listening tonight who might be interested in getting involved and financially supporting any of these projects, how would they go about learning more? Would they contact you? And do you have, for example, the 2028 proposal, a proposal for an exhibition that has sort of like how much money you would be needing to raise for something like that? How would that work?
Well, of course that would be great. I will welcome anyone who is interested in our project or want to support our project financially or in some other respects. If they are experts in the 3D model building or any other aspects of the digital technology that can help us, please contact us. You can contact me directly. You can go to our websites and find this our center's email. Just email us. We'll be happy to share the details, the logistics, and then the entire kind of the mechanism that we use to produce our projects. And then, like I said earlier, it's a very small team of operation. We only have 5 people, and then we have some volunteers from students, not only from University of Chicago. We also have volunteers from University of Chicago. So we try to be a little more inclusive. This is not just a project, for us. It's a project for everyone. And then we also want to promote the marriage between art and humanities and art and technology. So I think this is really the future of the art, not only the art historical studies, but also the museum studies. So we'll try to kind of share everything about that. And then, for the 2028 exhibition, we do have a very detailed proposal and also the budget sheet or the budget, with all these spending lines and all that figure out already. And then we have sent to a couple of potential donors. And then right now, for a couple of places, for example, some of our friends in Hong Kong, they have done a lot of exhibitions already. They have their the space is set up with all the equipments. That'll be easier for them to do that. But for us, we want to make this exhibition movable. That means I want to kind of design a tour exhibition, starting from University of Chicago and going somewhere else. So the equipments need to be installed in a way that can be disassembled. It will assemble based on adapting to the space that we have. So those things are very expensive. And then we need to also outsource we have ideas, we have our models, but how to put them together in a more professional way, we need to involve some of the digital exhibition companies, and that will also require a lot of budget for that. So the entire budget that we have right now is about 1 million or a little bit more than that. Yeah, so, and then it really requires a lot of fundraising, and that's something that we have been doing that I'm not very good at, but I try very hard to do that. But I think it's really worthwhile, and then it's a very important kind of the project to do, especially outside China. Thus far, we haven't really had this kind of very major kind of exhibitions featuring this type of reconstruction and also reimagination. And then hopefully we can kind of arouse some of the interest among the audiences. So if you feel like you want to be part of this endeavor, and then if you feel that way, please contact me, or you can easily find my information at different places, or you can just kind of visit our websites to see the scope and then the range of our projects, and then to find which part you want to be involved in. We'll be happy to talk to you.
Great, Professor Lin. This has been really fascinating for me, and I hope for our audience as well. Don't underestimate your ability to raise that funding for your projects. You're a really good spokesperson for this project, and I think you're doing great work. So I wanted to thank you for joining us this evening, and we really appreciate it. Also, people can contact the Hong Kong campus, and we can forward that information on to them if they'd like to do that, and forward it on to you if they're interested in learning more. So thank you
Yeah.
so much for joining.
Thank you so much for having me. It has been great a pleasure to present, our projects, and then hopefully, I know Hong Kong Center also has a little space right there, and then we are hoping that the sometime in the future we'll be able to install a little exhibition right there, so for people in Hong Kong to enjoy.
We've been talking about it, so let's make that happen.
That's
Thanks so
right.
much. Just a few housekeeping items for the audience tonight. I'd like to take the opportunity to just mention to you that this summer we're actually going to be doing two summer programs for high school students on campus. One is a repeat of what we did last year with the Data Science Summer Academy. And we're adding another program, the Introduction to Public Policy Summer Academy, that's supported by our Harris School of Public Policy. I do want to tell you that the application period has closed and we're reviewing the applications that have been submitted so far, but stay tuned on our website as some slots may become open and available next week if you miss the April deadline. So I did want to mention that to you. Also, we have two hybrid talks on campus next week. One is on Monday, May 12th at 7 p.m. on our Hong Kong campus. We'll have Professor Julia Henley talk about resolving the child care paradox. And then later in the week, on Wednesday, May 14th at 12 noon. So we have like a lunchbox talk, bring your lunch. That is with Professor Shirley Meng, who will share the topic, the global race for a better battery. And you don't want to miss either of those programs. You also don't want to miss learning more about our UChicago faculty by listening to the course podcast on Apple, Spotify, Himalaya, or wherever you listen to your podcast. The course podcast is a special production of the University of Chicago campus here in Hong Kong. So our team works really hard on that, and we feature all of our faculty on that podcast. I hope you can listen in. Thanks for joining us tonight. I hope to see you next week for our in-person programs, or at least online, and have a wonderful evening.